Mohamed el primer rey de la dinastía Nasrid, decidió expandir su territorio y se fue de Arjona y junto con sus tropas se fue a la ciudad de Almería y la conquistó. También conquistó Granada y Málaga. Luego unificó estos tres territorios y fundó el nuevo reinado Nasrid en el año 1232 y se proclamó él mismo como Mohamed el primero. Escogió a Granada como la capital por su ubicación. Granada está a 700 metros sobre el nivel del mar, una locación bien elevada y además rodeada al este, norte y sur por montañas que se constituyen en límites naturales de protección de los enemigos. La Alhambra se encuentra ubicada en la montaña de Sabica, un lugar estratégico, ya que desde aquí se podía observar toda la ciudad. Por eso, aquí se comienza la construcción de la Alcazaba, por orden de Mohamed III. Alcazaba viene del árabe al-Kashba, que significa el fuerte. Construyeron las murallas de una forma triangular para protección y también torres de observación. Desde aquí podían controlar toda la ciudad de Granada, ya que el alcázar tiene vista hacia el valle. El perímetro es de 2.2 kilómetros, lo que la haría una ciudad dentro de la ciudad. Todavía no estamos en la Alhambra. Esto es el Cliff of the Sands, donde se encuentra Generalife. Podemos ver las terrazas donde los Nasri cultivaban sus verduras y frutos, y a la izquierda podemos observar los árboles de pomegranate o granadas, y por eso la ciudad se llama así. Los árabes introdujeron en la época medieval muchos productos agrícolas, tales como berenjenas, alcachofas, zanahorias, auyamas, pimienta, ajo, cebolla, caña de azúcar, arroz, naranjas, limones, granadas, duraznos, melón, sandía, y todos estos frutos se cosechaban en estas terrazas, lo que hacía la Alhambra autosuficiente desde el punto de vista de la alimentación. Desde aquí podemos observar al fondo las casas blancas en la montaña opuesta. Esa área se conoce como el Albaicín, el antiguo distrito judío en Granada. En la época medieval, el 95% de los habitantes eran musulmanes y solo el 5% eran judíos y cristianos. Los judíos tenían su distrito en la parte sur de la ciudad, pero el Albaicín, que está ubicado al norte de la Alhambra, era el vecindario con mayor cantidad de habitantes. Se estima unas 50.000 personas. Hoy en día es muy fácil identificar iglesias católicas en el Albaicín, ya que después del año 1499 la mayoría de las mezquitas fueron demolidas y en su lugar se erigieron iglesias, muchas de las cuales todavía están en funcionamiento. Una de las más populares es la blanca que se puede ver. Esta es la iglesia de San Nicolás y adyacente está el mirador de San Nicolás, desde donde hay una panorámica de la Alhambra espectacular, así como también de la Sierra Prestemos atención al agua que cae bien despacio, creando un sonido muy suave como si fuera un susurro del agua. Este es el sonido que los Nazrites amaban en los tiempos medievales. Esta fuente pequeña resembla un oasis en el desierto. Ahora nos encontramos en Generalife, que viene del árabe Jannata Larif, que significa el paraíso del arquitecto. Los Nazrites decidieron llamar así a este lugar no como una referencia real al arquitecto que trabajó en el diseño de Generalife en la época medieval. Los Nazrites decidieron llamar así a este lugar no como una referencia real al arquitecto que trabajó en el diseño de Generalife en la época medieval, pero al arquitecto que para ellos era su Dios, Alá, el Creador Supremo, el Arquitecto Supremo. Todo lo que ellos podían disfrutar en la tierra era creado por Alá. Estos jardines en la época medieval eran de una importancia vital, ya que aquí ellos podían disfrutar de las vistas impresionantes y los sonidos de la naturaleza, así como los colores y olores de la vegetación al correr del agua. Ahora vamos a entrar al Palacio de Generalife. En la parte de arriba del arco está una representación de una llave. Para ellos, la llave abría las puertas de este maravilloso lugar. La llave siempre abre el paraíso. Pero el verdadero paraíso está en el tercer nivel, al cual para llegar hay que pasar por este pequeño jardín que funcionaba como un área de seguridad donde los guardias controlaban quién entraba y quién salía del palacio. Este jardín maravilloso donde hay flores y agua es el jardín Acequia, que viene del árabe Sakia, que significa canal de agua. Esta agua que fluye todavía viene del sistema de aguas creado por los Nazrites en la época medieval. La construcción de un fuerte islámico sin un sistema de aguas no tenía sentido, sobre todo si recordamos que los musulmanes rezan 5 veces al día y antes deben lavarse y purificarse. Este ritual se conoce como ablución. Por esto, Mohamed I, antes de comenzar la construcción de la Alcazaba en el año 1238, trabajó con un ingeniero que creó una gran represa de agua a solo 6 kilómetros de distancia hacia el este de la ciudad, en una locación con mayor altura de la Alhambra, cerca del río Darro, el cual atraviesa el centro de la ciudad. El ingeniero desvió el río hacia la presa y creó un canal de agua de 6 kilómetros que fluía por gravedad, irrigando primero la parte alta de Generalife, luego bajando hacia las terrazas. Ahora estamos en una torre de observación en el Palacio del Generalife. La decoración de las paredes es original. Desde aquí se puede observar la Alhambra y la ciudad de Granada. Este jardín acequia fue diseñado de forma que siempre estuviera iluminado por el sol saliente en el este y luego el poniente en el oeste, y específicamente en verano, que uno de sus lados siempre estuviera con sombra, ya que las temperaturas pueden llegar a los 40 grados centígrados. Este pabellón está construido de manera que a pesar de las altas temperaturas en verano, siempre se sienta fresco, casi como un aire acondicionado. En la época medieval, este jardín era el área donde se ubicaban los hammam, los baños sauna o baños árabes, muy parecidos a baños termales romanos. Pero todos los hammams en todo el territorio español fueron demolidos desde el año 1499. Guavil, el último rey nasrid, cuando decidió rendirse, estando en desacuerdo con los monarcas católicos, se fue de Granada en el año 1492. Pero antes de irse, trató de negociar las mejores condiciones para la comunidad musulmana, para que los católicos respetaran a los musulmanes, ya que se les permitió quedarse en el territorio español. Pero la situación para ellos se complicó especialmente a partir del año 1499, debido a la Inquisición española, que ejecutaba a los musulmanes que no se convertían al cristianismo, y los cristianos se ocuparon de remover todos los símbolos musulmanes que existían en la península, y por esto todos los hammam fueron destruidos, así como este jardín que sustituyó los baños musulmanes. Y ahora nos dirigimos por este paseo hacia la Alhambra.
We connect again with the walk of the cypress trees, and that other walk is leading the complex of the Alhambra. So the current connection between Alhambra and Generalife is very easy. It only takes 5 minutes to go English. Well, Alhambra in Arabic, in English, that means the red one, the red fortress, the red castle. We have different theories related to the origin of the name. One of those theories is because of the color of the hair of the first king of the Nasrid dynasty. I mean, Nasrids never left paintings nor portraits of themselves. What they used to leave could be descriptions of themselves, descriptions of the Alhambra as well. I mean, how was the life in the Alhambra in medieval times and so on. Taking into account those descriptions, today we can assure that Muhammad ibn Nasser, Muhammad I, he was red-haired. He had a very long red beard. That's why maybe they called that citadel like that, as he ordered the construction of the Alcazaba, which is the origin of the Alhambra, the most ancient section in the entire complex. The second theory is related to the building. They decided to create the garden on the roof. Yeah. Exactly. Now, in April, at the beginning of springtime, the gardens look amazing because many flowers, exactly, they are blooming now. So, yeah, decide less than 100 years ago, by the same garden designer that I talked to you about before, Leopoldo Torres Balbás. Okay, so he planted many trees here. Alhambra, interesting. A Catholic church standing in the middle of an Islamic fortress. The place where you can see this church, that used to be the location of the former main mosque. The main mosque of the Alhambra stood there. In medieval times, a great part of the population living in the Alhambra, many of those inhabitants living in the Medina area, they used to come to this mosque, especially on Friday, built up in the 17th century actually. Good, so now you can see on the right, that's a medieval gate, another original one, which is called the Justice Gate. I mean, that used to be the most important gate. I mean, in medieval times, members of the Nashwit family used to go through it every time they left the Alhambra, every time they came back, okay? That's why there you can appreciate this typical Spanish Moorish architecture with those horseshoe arches that you can see over there. And well, we also have interesting symbols. For example, the hand, that hand is called Fatima's hand. In many Arabic societies, that symbol is supposed to be a protection symbol. I mean, the hand is supposed to keep bad luck away, right? So maybe the hands there protects the Alhambra of being invaded by the enemies. But well, just behind that arch where you can see the hand, we have another arch which is a bit smaller, and you can identify again the symbol that we could see before in Generalife. If you stand here, pay attention to the symbol. You can see the key again. Can you see the key? As I told you, this gate is the most important one. I mean, it's the closest one to the Nashwit palaces, so that's why you can identify the key there. I mean, the key opens the gate, which is leading the beauty of the palaces. I mean, the paradise that we are going to find over there, okay? So the main function of that gate would be to give access to the real citadel of the Alhambra, which is all that area that we left behind. I mean, the Medina area, the former main mosque, which stood there, the Nashwit palaces, which are on the right side. I mean, that would be the citadel full of life, actually. I mean, what we have on the other side of that gate that we can see opposite is the Alcazaba. I mean, the Alcazaba belonged to the complex as well, obviously, but we are going to see in a few minutes. So this gate, we could say that it would be the connection, okay, between the military area and the rest of the citadel. So that's why the design is so simple, okay? So we go through it in a straight line. Entrances to the free access area. So that's why all that area that you can see opposite is full of people. This place is much more crowded because maybe many people who didn't get the tickets because the tickets for today were sold out at the palace in a while, okay? But now I would like you to pay attention to the watchtower that you can see opposite. This watchtower is the oldest one in the entire complex, and it became the first royal residence for the two first kings of the Nashwid dynasty. I mean, Muhammad I and Muhammad II, they used to live with the royal family inside this watchtower. Remember that still in the 13th century, the rest of the Alhambra didn't exist yet. I mean, the rest of the Alhambra was born at the beginning of the 14th century. At that time, Muhammad III ordered the construction of the defensive wall, whose perimeter is 2.2 kilometers. The Nashwid palaces that we are visiting in a few minutes, they also date from the 14th century. So for the first decades in the 13th century, the royal residence would be this watchtower. That's only the first view, but the view from the other side of the Alcazaba is going to be even more panoramic, okay? So we can go directly there. Not that easy to walk on this kind of pavement. We have to turn to the left. Now we turn to the right. We enter a little watchtower where the light gets darker. So that's the design that I tried to explain to you before in the Justice Gate. Now we are entering a fortress. That's the most important military place. So That's why the access is a bit complicated. But once inside, we suddenly find all those foundations. This place looks like a maze, but nothing to see. It's not a maze. Those are only the foundations of those houses for those soldiers. Around 300 soldiers used to coexist within this triangle. But the Alcazaba was also blown up by those explosions carried out by Napoleon troops. So unfortunately today we cannot see anything. For example, by looking at those archaeological remains, I mean this house on the corner, you can get an idea of the original structure within the house. You have to imagine the main facade here and the main entrance could be located here. So you have to imagine like a small door. The door is leading a small reception. On the left side, we have the remain of the latrine. That's the toilet that they used to have at home, right? And there, in the middle of the house, you have to imagine an open-air courtyard. So the light could be coming through the courtyard, and that's why the rooms, they are always around the courtyard. So in this kind of a structure would be the typical Moorish house in Al-Andalus. All the houses in Al-Andalus used to be like that. I mean, bigger, smaller, according to members of the family living in the house, but the structure would be always like that. Everything is turning around the inner courtyard.
Do you think there's a kitchen?
They are still today considered very good places of socialization. So I would like you to take a look down there. You can see the ditch. That's the remain of the boiler. So the hot room, this kind of sauna, would be there. Just behind the warm room. At the end, the cold one. You notice how those three rooms are interconnected, okay? So now we are going to enter this watchtower.
Okay.
That's the view that I promised before. Now you understand much better why Muhammad I chose that location for the construction of the Alcazaba, as they could dominate everything from here. The Alcazaba is facing the valley. Today, there's a huge building standing in the city center. That building that you can see there is the Cathedral of Granada. That's the second biggest cathedral in Spain today, after the Cathedral of Seville, which is the biggest one in Spain. On the left side of the cathedral, you can see another white building, which is a bit lower, with those pinnacles. I mean, that's Gothic architecture. That's the Royal Chapel, the place where the remains of Catholic monarchs are buried. So all that area became the new Christian neighborhood in Granada. Many transformations were carried out there. Since the year 1492, Granada was the last Muslim city, so the main purpose would be to transform this city into a completely new Christian city. So that's why the main mosque of Granada, which stood there, it was completely demolished and replaced by such a big cathedral and the Royal Chapel, okay? Interesting, Catholic monarchs wanted to be buried in Granada because of that reason. Granada must be shown to the rest of the world as the symbol of the victory. In fact, the place where Catholic monarchs reached the agreement with Columbus you can read it here. And this palace was built up under the kingdom of Ismail I between the years 1314 and 1325. Remember that the situation became much better for Nasrids since the very beginning of the 14th century, we have to think that the two first kings, Muhammad I and II, those ones who lived in the Al-Qasaba, in order to be legitimized in power, they had to reach agreements with those other territories, with those other states surrounding the Nasrid territory. You have to think that the Nasrid territory, if you don't mind to stand here because many other people are coming in, so it's better, exactly. Here is perfect. You can take your pictures from here. The Nasrid kingdom occupied a very small area, only 3 cities, Almeria, Granada, Malaga. That territory, which was very small, it was totally surrounded by another powerful kingdoms, Castile, Aragon, Morocco, Tunisia in the north of Africa. So Nasrids, if they wanted to survive in power for a long time, they had to try to establish a very good relationship with those other kingdoms in order to avoid those invasions, right? So the two first kings, Muhammad I and II, reached different pacts with Castile, with Morocco, and that's why at the beginning of the 14th century, the situation for them became much better, much more stable. So at that time, they started expanding the Alhambra, and while different kings like Ismail I ordered the construction of places like that one. The word Mekswa comes from the Arabic. That means in English, state council. So that used to be the political area. In medieval times, ministers working in the government of those different Nasrid kings used to meet here in order to make decisions. But the room that you can see today doesn't look like the original one. According to the description left by Nasrids of this place, all those windows that you can see there didn't exist. Remember, ostentation is forbidden. Islamic architecture is never open to the landscape, but it's usually open to the sky. So that's why today we can assure that everything would be closed there, and those 4 pillars made of marble stone used to support a very big stained glass window up there. Imagine for a moment the sunlight coming through the stained glass. The reflection on the walls, on the floor, probably made this place even brighter. That's the idea. They used to create quite colorful decoration in order to make places like this one brighter. So that's why at the bottom part of the room, we find those beautiful ceramic tiles representing geometrical shapes. Those are independent pieces. I mean, all those pieces have been inlaid one by one as if it was a puzzle, right? And the decoration that you can see at the top part of the room is the same one that we could see before in Generalife. Again, stucco walls. The remaining color there, blue, but you also have to imagine red, green. All the Arabic writing used to be covered by golden leaves. It used to be gold color. Arabic writing plays an important role. Muslims, they don't think of God as a person. What they actually have from God is the word of God. In rooms inside the palaces, the most important place here is the arch that you can see on the right. That's the place for the imam. Imam is the person who leads the praying in the mosque or in a praying room like this one. So at that time, the imam was the king. So the king used to be there. The king is the maximum religious authority in the state, right? So that's why the king used to be there. The rest of the people that joined the king just behind him, pay attention to the direction of the room. The direction of that room looks different to the direction here. As Muslims, every time they pray, they have to do it facing Mecca, exactly. From here, from Spain, southeast, in that direction, Saudi Arabia. And here, we are in the second part of the palace. This room is called the golden room because of the gold color in the ceiling. There you have a very big window. That window is another Christian addition. In medieval times, there was no window there. The light, natural light in medieval times, would be coming through that courtyard, and that's why they opened there, those 3 arches, they are facing the inner courtyard. So they let the light come in, okay? So that has been opened in the 16th century, actually. I would like you to pay attention to this sentence that you can read here. Even if you don't understand Arabic, you notice that the sentence repeats everywhere, all the time. It's like a mantra. You take a look around and you can see the sentence in many different places. The sentence translated into English means, there's no other victor but God. And there's no other victor but God. And there's no other victor but God. More than 7,000 times on the walls of Alhambra and Generalife. That's one of the ways they could feel God in a place like that one. you notice that the pattern in those geometrical shapes, in those ceramic tiles, repeats also all the time. It's a way of showing the eternity. Everything must be turning around the same, you know? Eternity. Eternity is only reachable in paradise. They could be also like stars moving in circle in the sky. Muslims feel that they are connected with the divine world through the stars. So that's why geometry plays a very important role in Islamic art. This courtyard where we are used to be a public place in medieval times. I mean, in the first palace where we still are, private rooms could be also only located on the second floor. Those are private rooms there and also there. Women spent most of their time in those private rooms. But this place used to be especially a public place. This is the place where they organized those audiences for locals. I mean, at that time, if any inhabitant of the Kingdom of Granada, someone living in Albaicin, for example, wanted to come to the Alhambra, that person would be received by the king in a place like that. Pay attention to the entrance of this place. That tiny arch. People must enter one by one. They didn't want too many people coming in at the same time. As a plot could be organized here, the king, who always sat on the throne opposite in the middle of those two doors, he could be attacked, and well, the purpose is to avoid those attacks or invasions, okay? So those people used to enter one by one. They used to be waiting in that room, in the golden room, and only when the king sat down there, that person was permitted to get out, and from there, and totally surrounded by guards, that person would be talking directly to the king. The beauty of the facade standing behind the figure of the king probably makes those people get totally impressed. Most of you, when you entered, started taking pictures of the facade. You like the facade, right? So imagine at that time, if you are there alone, surrounded by guards, with the head of your state in front of you, you cannot find the exit here. I mean, both doors would be closed. You don't know if someone is looking at you from those upper windows. So you probably feel intimidated. You probably feel small. That's the idea, to make them feel small in order to avoid those attacks. By the way, reason for the water, water makes this place much cooler in summer, when the temperature in Granada is very hot. Another reason for the water, in a public place like this one, where they received people coming from the city or from anywhere, water is a symbol of power. They come from those countries where they don't have so much water, Arabic countries, so that's why the more water we see in those palaces, the more powerful they tried to demonstrate they were. Okay? Under the kingdom of Yusuf I, one of the most distinguished kings of the Nasrid dynasty. It took them 20 years to build up the entire palace. You notice that the shape of this palace could remind to the Generalife, the first one. The other one used to be like a long-shaped palace as well. Two short sides, facing south and north, okay? Because of the same reason that I told you before, the sun is rising on the east, is going down on the west, so that's why we can feel the sunlight in the courtyard all day long, but short sides stay always in shade. Nasrids noticed that if they wanted to survive in power for a long time, they had to establish a very good relationship with those other kingdoms surrounding the Nasrid territory. So by reaching those agreements that I told you before, Nasrids never stopped paying a lot of high taxes to those other kingdoms in order to avoid those invasions. So today, we can assure that the Nasrid kingdom was a tributary state. They used to pay a lot of high tributes, okay, to Castile, to Aragon. So Nasrids were aware of their dependence. They always depended on another kingdoms in order to survive. But in a place like that one, the place where those Nasrid kings used to receive those visitors coming from those kingdoms, Nasrids wanted to demonstrate how smart they were. They created something like that. What? Throne of God, which is the beginning of paradise. ceiling. Taking into account this theocracy that I explained to you, where do you think that those Nasrid kings used to sit in this room every time they received here those visitors coming from other countries, from another state?
In the middle?
In the middle, exactly, under God, protected. So, now, if you'd like to take your pictures, you can do it. But I would like you, especially, to pay attention to the water. I would like you to discover what's the other real function of the water in the pool. To get the reflection. The water acts as a mirror. I told you that this huge wooden door, which is open, used to be the main entrance to the palace. So imagine those visitors, those they could see in front of them, they probably thought that the tower, the Comares Tower, is bigger than reality is, but that's an optical illusion. You tend to think that the tower is bigger because you can see the tower reflected on the realities. And it's interesting, as on the water, you cannot see only the architecture reflected, but you can see the sky reflected on the water. Paradise. That's the way Nasrids unified, they put together heaven and earth. And they created here like a kind of, I mean, in those countries, people usually have a lot of descendants, you know, and the father, I mean, like the father, yeah, it's like the person who is in charge of the maintenance of all of them. So that's why here they would be a lot of them. I mean, not all the people, I mean, Muslims are permitted to marry 4 wives, but not everyone can afford the maintenance of so many members in the family. But in that case, we are talking about the kings. Many of the karnas are those prisms, geometrical shapes hanging down from the ceiling. This kind of decoration is very common to see in Islamic art. It was born in Persia, which is the country of Iran today, but it became very, very popular in Islamic architecture. So Arabs took those mukarnas from the former Persian art. And well, today, for example, here in the Palace of the Lions, it's very common to find cupolas like this one. Civilian painters, so that those people moved to Granada and they started working on the creation of paintings like that one. That's very, very unusual to see. A Christian piece, a Christian painting in an Islamic palace. But this is a very good example of this cultural exchange that used to take place in Al-Andalus. See, on the second floor, 4 windows, 4 rooms for those 4 official wives, okay? Another little alcove here, the place where they could be resting or sleeping at night. But I would like you can identify Arabic writing made on ceramic, okay? We couldn't see that before, but that's the only place where you can see that. I mean, there. But I would like you especially to take a look up. You have to see the ceiling of this place. Not this ceiling, well, this one as well, obviously, but the other one, okay? Exactly. So once you have the chance to get closer, from there, you take a look up, okay? It was removed, unfortunately, but taking into account that description, the other one would be similar to this one. But this one is the old. Back to the city center. By walking, you have to go straight down all the time. I mean, you find the forest that surrounds the Alhambra just